What's up, and welcome to another episode of the Grindline Podcast, just in episode 237. I am here tonight with Ryan. Tyler's internet is a giant pile of garbage, but we also have Brian, Fischer, and Scotty Bentley from the Locked On Red Wings podcast with us tonight to play some fun little games, like off-season content when there's absolutely zero news. But how you guys doing tonight?
Doing good. Thanks for having us. I know we've been trying to set this up since probably at least the draft party. I think is when we first started talking about it. But here we are in August, and we finally got around to getting on a pod together to, well, like you said, play some fun little games and help the off season pass by
as fast as possible.
Right? Yeah. We've been like, in each other's mentions and like interacting with each other and trying to do something like this for. I've been on Locked On Red Wings for like 2.5 years now, and I feel like we've been like pretty close for like that entire time. So it's finally nice to actually be able to do it.
It's always been teased to have a giant Red Wings podcast roundtable.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked to Ryan, and we've got you guys. It's like slowly the powers are being combined.
We're like some weird ass Voltron. That's like it's all messed up. Like, I think to have all of us though, because there are quite a few like Red Wings podcasts now. If you try to get everyone on a meeting, we'd be here for hours. Just it'd be like a 6-hour episode. We'd all be talking over each other. You might as well just do a live stream at that point. Just have people drop in. But yeah, we're gonna play a game tonight because, like we said, there's no news. The Erik Karlsson trade. The Erik Karlsson trade. So we're going to do that off the top. We're just going to give our kind of quick remarks on that. And then we're going to play a little bit of over under. So Erik Karlsson, and let me pull it up because it was an awfully convoluted trade. Erik Karlsson went to the Pittsburgh Penguins with 13% retained salary. Also, Dylan Heimlich and a 2026 third round pick that is San Jose's. To the San Jose Sharks went Mikael Granlund, Mike Hoffman, Jan Rutta, a 2024 first, which was Pittsburgh's. And to the Montreal Canadiens went Jeff Petrie with 25% retained, Casey DeSmith, Nathan Leger, and a 2025 second-round pick. So off the top, I'd say the winners are the San Jose Sharks for getting rid of that contract. I mean, the Habs are apparently, the word is they're trying to trade Jeff Petrie already, that they're not going to keep him, and they're just going to get rid of him. Only $1.5 million retained on Erik Karlsson, so he goes over with, $10 million cap hit?
Yep.
To the Penguins. And to me, I looked at it for like 10 minutes and I'm like, I don't know. I can't even figure this out. And I turned it off because it's the offseason and it doesn't involve us. But I would say San Jose won that trade for getting rid of it. And then it shows that the Pens are really going to try and push to get Crosby a cup before he has to retire.
Yeah, I mean, I think that you say it's a win for the San Jose Sharks. I'd actually chop it up as a win for the Pittsburgh Penguins personally, too. Mainly for the main reason, not because you're getting a 34-year-old Erik Karlsson coming off of a great season. That's great. We all know he has that injury history. Yeah, but more so because they managed to shed salary in the process. They took on a $10 million contract, but managed to come out of this with an extra $3 million that they're still over the cap by like $70,000, but they shed $3 million in that trade somehow, despite taking on $10 million. That's a win. And while I don't necessarily, as an outside fan looking in, agree with the all-in mentality the Pittsburgh Penguins have because of the fact that they're aging, I do understand Kyle Dubas going there and him being brought in. His job is to win one more Stanley Cup with the core that they have. And so you got to get a guy who can maybe get you back in the playoffs. And you hope Karlsson's injury history holds out. And doesn't come back to bite them, and he has another great season in him. So as an outside fan looking in, I still think it's silly to go all in when you already were the oldest team to begin with in the NHL. But I do understand it, and I do think it's a win because they managed to shed salary in the process. I do have a high amount of irony, though, that the fact that Jeff Petrie got traded back to the Canadiens, a year after he got traded away from them?
Yeah, and that they're going to try and get rid of him again.
Yeah, like 6 degrees of separation for Petrie in Montreal.
No, I mean, shout out Jeff Petrie, by the way. Detroit family royalty there. But I think that my only, the trade itself, you guys have already said some pretty great points about that. And it's obviously very complicated and whatnot. But I think the biggest thing for me is just the timing of trading Karlsson. Not that this is a bad time. San Jose's obviously in a rebuild. my thing is like it to maximize value. You could argue this should have happened at the deadline or last year, or like go down the road like 2 years ago. They're like, for me, it's like this is fine. You got rid of the salary. I think you picked up a first round pick at some point in there. Like it's definitely not like awful value. But I as someone who also covers the Tigers, I've been talking about maximizing players' value a lot lately. And I feel as though they may have maybe not waited too long is like too dramatic, but I feel like they could have got maybe a better return. Obviously, he had a great year and whatnot this season, but even at the deadline, if they decided to move him then instead, I just feel like maybe they didn't maximize his value given where he's at in his career. But yeah, as far as the trade goes, I mean, I don't think anyone's like a huge loser out of this.
Mute button works. No, I would agree. I mean, you look at trades of this magnitude typically, and you're talking about Erik Karlsson, one of the top offensive defensemen in all of hockey, and he has been for years. You would think there'd be more picks almost going San Jose's way. They got a first rounder. It's conditional, top 10 protected. But the second rounder that was divvied out from Pittsburgh went to Montreal. So they made out on that one, on top of getting maybe 3 players, 2 of them NHL level, but it sounds like they're already trying to get rid of one in Petrie. You have Casey DeSmith, so you've settled on your goaltending for that. Now that throws for Pittsburgh. I mean, here's where it gets kind of interesting. You got Jari, and now is Ned going to be their backup? Is it going to be Hellberg? Now you've got a backup from Detroit from last season that wasn't really a backup, and either guy, arguably. I mean, I wish Ned all the best, and I have gone back many a times and cried about him and Husso not being a fantastic 1A, 1B. But is he going to return to form? You would think so, with a better defensive team in front of him. But I don't know. Is this a move that you kind of wish that a Ken Holland would have made in the final years of Datsyuk and Zetterberg? But at the same, like, you thought that those things were going to happen, but instead he just spent draft capital on guys that ended up really didn't play in a whole lot of games and didn't improve the team that much. So it's, for me, it's tough to say who won. I don't really think anybody won in that matter, unless Montreal's able to get rid of Petrie for another draft pick, a high pick that for that matter. But I don't see that happening.
I'll tell you who won. Erik Karlsson won. Erik Karlsson got to go to a team and have an opportunity to win another Stanley Cup, and that's really what he was trying to have happen. I do want to chime in though on the value of Erik Karlsson, because I think that people tend to have overinflated his value pretty much all offseason long. Yeah, he won the Norris. He had a great comeback season, the best season of his career, numbers-wise. We all know that he's kind of a black hole defensively, but that's not why you trade for a guy like him. His big detractions were, again, 34 years old. He's on the back half of his career. He has a long injury history. And I just think that teams look at that and that contract that he had. What was it, like $11.5 million? When you take all that, it's insane. When you take all that into account, I think other teams are going like, yeah, he had one really, really good year, but he's 34 years old with an injury history on a huge cap hit. It's going to be really hard. Like, I think that this is the best case scenario that San Jose could have ever gotten realistically, is one first round pick. And it's top 10 protected. It's not an unprotected first, because there's just so many detractors to his value that this is the best that they probably could have gotten. So while some San Jose fans might feel they should have gotten more, you look at the situation, it's kind of like Ottawa fans with DeBrincat. Like, you weren't going to get anything for him because he was forcing his way out. So there was no leverage there. The San Jose Sharks never really had any leverage despite the Norris Trophy.
And I mean, to that point too, you look at it, you traded out one huge contract, one serviceable player, for 3 decent contracts at 2 years or less for each one, and all guys that could potentially help improve your team.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think DeSmith is a good pickup too for the Canadians. I mean, that's a solid pickup there. But if you look at Erik Karlsson, and it was a prime time, like, he's like, I'm going to get myself out of San Jose. And that is the reason he had that season, to go from 35 points in 50 games to 101 points in 82 games with one of the worst teams in the entire league. Made All-Star. He was 26th in Lady Byng. He had Lady Byng votes. He had 15 in Hart and won the Norris. So, like, he got all these votes, and he's like, I'm going to play my way out of this place. And he did. And the Penguins need to pray to the hockey gods that he repeats what he did last season and doesn't fall back down. Because, like you said, Brian, Black Hole is nice for saying what he is defensively. If you look at the JFresh charts, if it would like project a 0, he'd be a 0. Because I mean, I hate plus minus again as a blanket statement on the Grindline podcast. Plus minus sucks. He was a minus 26. Now the team was bad, but he was a minus 26 with 101 points. So that's, I mean, a lot of points and you're still a minus. It's just good on them. Good on San Jose for moving him. Good on the Penguins for trying to win cups for Crosby before he has to go. Good on Montreal for existing. And that's basically, that's the Erik Karlsson trade in a nutshell. And that's like, I think the last maybe big thing that will happen besides Dumba signed to go back to college for a year. So,
I'll be amazed if they don't have the top power play in hockey next year. If you can throw Karlsson and Letang on the back end and you lose nothing offensively when it comes to that power play with Crosby, Malkin, and insert person, and you're set.
And player name here. Yeah. So what we're going to do is we're going to get to the meat of the episode tonight. So we're going to play a little game of over-under. So we have each come up with our own over-under kind of scenarios and bars. We will present one. Everyone will give their thought on it. They will take the over. They will take the under. And then the person who posed the question will take their over or under. And we're going to kind of go around in a circle to do this. In the middle, we will take a break for a commercial. And a group commercial, as we like to call it. And then we will pick back up. So what we're going to do is we're going to let guests go first. Brian is going to pose his first over-under. Scotty is going to give the first response. Then it'll go to Ryan and me before Brian answers. So Brian, you can take it away.
Thanks. So the first one I have for you is a player-specific statistic. Ville Husso, we all know, started off the season last year as statistically one of the best goalies in the league, especially if you love goals saved above expected, like I do, before the team kind of caught up with him and drove him into the ground, and then injuries happened. He ended up finishing the year with a .896 save percentage. Not great. Well, the league save percentage average, at least partway through the year, I didn't double check on this statistic, so I could be off base, but the league average save percentage, at least at one point during last year, was .908. My question for you guys is over under Ville Husso save percentage of a .908 save percentage for next season. Do you think he gets below that or over that in the 2023-2024 season? Scotty, you're up first, bud.
Well, first off, I love the question. I think that's a good, league average. I think that's a good number to pick too.
You better, or else you're fired. So
you do not have the power to do that. I actually have been here longer than you anyway. So as far as it goes, I think that, man, like a 12% like improvement is a lot, like from 1 year to 1 year. And like they certainly had a lot of additions to the blue line this offseason. And that's clearly something that just like organization wide, they like clearly want to address. I think, man, I'm going to go with a hair under. And I like barely. And the reason why it's barely is because we actually just talked about Husso in our last show. And when looking at his month by month save percentage, like it was most of the months were like 900 or better. And certainly nothing was close to the first 2 months of the season when he was out of this world. But most of them were still like, like an 898 or a 901 or whatnot. But his last 2 months was dreadful. It was like 860 something and like 855, I think was his April. So like if he can just avoid like stooping to like, one of the worst starting goalies in the entire NHL for 2 months, then I think that that save percentage is naturally just going to go way up. That all being said, a 12% increase, that would require him to have an otherworldly month as well as not dropping well below. And I think the odds of both of those things happening the same season, even with the additions in front of him, is a lot. Not impossible, but a lot. And so I think I'm going to go with in my mind, the safer bet and go just a hair under, like a 905-ish is kind of where I'm at.
I mean, if you look at the NHL stats last year for goaltending, a minimum of 15 games played, I try to keep it around 15 to 20. You had 29 goalies at a 908 and above. One of them even being Craig Anderson in his geriatric state. So
somehow
I think that's a safe bar to set it at, because there's only 6 goalies at a 920 and above. So most of your top goaltending, arguably, if you want to call it that, like Shesterkin's a 916, Vasilevsky, you could argue at an off year, is at a 915. That it's a safe range to be in if you're Ville Husso, and if that's what Detroit's at, you're having a good season. And to carry on your point there, Scott, he had an 867 in March and an 855 in April. Now, granted, April was only 5 games and 7 games respectively, but that was after February was a 913 and the January 884, but every other year was over a 9. So rough. But if he's hovering at a 908, which would be considered at the league average, this is a team that's probably winning a couple more games and in a much better position. But I think I'm going to have to lean at the under right now. I say all that.
That's rough, Ryan. After all of that, you're like, yeah.
I propped it up real hard and then just be like, no, it's not going to happen.
All right. So if I'll start by saying that if Husso does get a 908, so the Red Wings for team goaltending last season were 25th in the league with an 890.
Only 25th?
Only 25th. A 909 was the Toronto Maple Leafs in 10th place, and followed by a 904 for the New Jersey Devils. Now, this is a team save percentage. So looking at Ville Husso, now we had said in one of the previous episodes when we talked about James Reimer, if we could have Reimer take 10 games away from Ville Husso, because Ville Husso played 56 games last season, you could really see that he was overworked. Because in his previous season, he only played 40 games. He had 16 more games, is quite a bit for a goalie. And partway through the season, he was kind of hurt. They were saying, oh, you're going to take a break. Oh, never mind, you're not taking a break anymore. You're coming back and we need you to play. So I think that he even said that mentally, he's trying to get more mentally prepared this offseason. He's popping up in like a lot of stuff. He was at a Lions thing. They're like, look, Ville Husso. He was at the draft party and they're like, look, Ville Husso. So they're like trying to pump him up and get him to feel better. A 908, I think if he gets, like you said, that's a big jump to go from his, what did we say? He was at an 896 last season.
Yep.
But the season before in St. Louis, he was at a 919 with 40 games played. So I think if you can
800 minutes less played as well.
Sure. But I think if you can get him 10 less games than he played last season and kind of chop it up a little bit and lean a little bit more on Reimer, I think a 908 is achievable for Husso with a good offseason and just kind of like a mental improvement there and a health improvement in Husso. So I will take the over on a 908 for Ville Husso. I'm going to take it.
I think I'm with you, Greg. I think I'm going to take the over as well. I'm not going to say he's going to crush it. I think it's going to be like a 909. But for reasons that both Scotty and Ryan said in an attempt to prop it up before just absolutely sweeping it at the knees. But I think that with the one, you got to remember too, it was the first year of a new head coach running a brand new defensive scheme. The defensive core outside of their top pair, which was Seider and Walman, and it took Seider some time to get going last year, was absolutely abysmal. And while people's feelings on Justin Holl signing might be mixed, like you look at this defensive core altogether, and it is a better defensive core in front of him. And with the fact that James Reimer, with the exception of this past year, had a career worst year. He's never had a season outside this past year below 900 save percentage himself. He played 40 games this last year or over 40 games this last year and 40 games the season before. So he's going to take games away from Husso, which would otherwise probably pull down his save percentage because workload would become an issue. And we talk about it. I talked about it with Scotty on Monday's episode, but the injury for him is he played through injuries at the end of the season, which ultimately brought the save percentage down. And the way he got his starts was oftentimes bunched. At the start of the season, it was spaced out because they're trying to figure out what the dynamic was going to be with the goaltending. Well, then it very quickly became obvious that Nedeljkovic and Hellberg were not it. And he would have like a 5-goal game and they'd put Husso back out there because that's still better than what they were getting from their backup situation. So I think all those factors combine into giving him, more breathing room more time to regroup if things turn south, a better supporting cast in front of him, another year under a defensive-minded head coach to really hammer things home on the team. And then he's just going to come back healthy. And I just think that he'll regroup. I think it'll be like a 909 save percentage. I don't think he's, like I said, he's going to crush it. But I think it's doable for him. And I could be wrong. I believe I said something very similar about Alex Nedeljkovic going into last season.
Oh, don't even start with us on that.
You're not alone. You are not alone.
But I still believe in Husso. I think a lot of the troubles that he had to do with just workload, injury, and the piss poor team in front of him.
Yeah, and like we had said before, we're not going to slander Justin Holl until we see what he can do here, because the Toronto media is insane.
Yeah, brutal.
And Toronto fans have proven that whenever we say anything to them about, or we mention them and they go, yeah, but you guys signed Justin Holl. I'm like, okay, guys, it'll be Justin Holl for what he's going to come here and do is going to be
you
absolutely
signed Ryan
fine.
Reeves, shut up.
Yeah, they signed Ryan Reeves, so they can't talk. But I think you're right, Brian. So I think if you, with an improved defense, a lowered workload, coming back healthy, another year under Lalone in the system, I think it'll all be really good for Husso. And and he's still technically, for a goalie, he's young. What's he going to be, 29? So I think all signs are pointing in Husso's direction for an improved season. But for the next over-under, we are going to move to Scotty.
Yeah, well, I honestly, I almost did 50 and a half games played for Ville Husso. So I'm glad we didn't, because we got that conversation out of the way already. So this is one I told you guys before we hopped on air that, like, this is a stretch to really make like a true over under, but I'm going to do it anyway. I was looking up team, just like special teams rankings, really, not even the exact percentage, but just rank it where they fall within the NHL. And the last time that the Wings finished in the top half of the NHL in both power play and penalty kill in the same season was 2015, the 15-16 season. So my question was, and if you have separate answers for the power play and the penalty kill, obviously that's more than okay. So I'm kind of like cheating and doing 2 and 1, but over under being ranked 16th in power play and penalty kill in this NHL season for the Detroit Red Wings.
Ooh, that's me first. I'm going to go over on the power play. And I feel like DeBrincat is going to be a driving force in that. You can mix and match that top unit power play all you want, but they're going to be better. And I think that's going to make the second pairing or grouping better. And to me, you've got that type of goal scoring now on your top line, and we've been trying to hammer it home of just play your best players, because it hasn't been the greatest the last several years. So your best guys on the ice can go out there and try to score you some goals. Now you've got that ability to try to throw that out there for your first power play unit, and I think that's going to help them succeed. Because you look at a team like Ottawa, barely just finished ahead of Detroit, but they had a 23.5% power play percentage last year and finished 8th. So if you're jumping up in that top 16, you're looking at 21 and a half and above. I think you're in a good spot, and I think that's doable for Detroit. So I think over on the power play, PK wise, they finished 18th last season.
But they were around 17th and 18th in both. Yeah, they were kind of right in the same net. So
Colorado finished right above them. Them in Pittsburgh at 79 and 79.1 respectively. I think if you're hitting 79.5 to 80%, you're hitting that top 15 mark potentially. And you're in, again, I think that helps improve your team, because it's less special team goals against, more for profit, right? So I think that both could be over 16.
Yeah, I think I'm going to take the over too. So if you look, like you said, Red Wings were 17th in the league with a 21-11 power play. They were 18th with a 78.3 PK. I'm also looking at adding someone like Shayne Gostisbehere to the power play, who is absolutely like a offensive stud. You put a guy like, again, Christian Fischer on the penalty kill, who that's what he's brought here to do is kill penalties. I think even if they put someone like a Klim Kostin on a second power play unit, he could even improve, because he's got amazing finishing numbers. He's got amazing goals per 60 numbers. He just needs the more opportunity. So we had talked over the last few episodes just about how versatile the team is. Now, bringing in guys that are more defensive for PK, I think you brought more in for the power play. But if you're going to look at teams that could possibly be falling as well, you could see Boston. Boston lost Patrice Bergeron on the penalty kill. Their penalty kill could fall from 12th. You look at like Ottawa, who, as much as they want to bash DeBrincat now for leaving, Dominic Kubelik's not a DeBrincat replacement. Tarasenko, yeah, sure, if he keeps it up and he's healthy, that's the other thing. They were 8th. If he's not healthy, they could fall. So there are teams up toward the top. I mean, Tampa's not getting any younger. That's another issue.
Power play or PK?
I'm talking power play.
Okay, you said PK. That's why I was confused.
Yeah,
like, wait a minute.
I'm talking power play.
Sorry.
But Tampa's not getting any younger. That's the other half of it too. So, and when we did the War roster builder from JFresh, Tampa finished below us in standings based on their current roster.
They still have some of the best players in hockey to throw out there for a top power play unit.
They do, but what if in game 3 Steven Stamkos breaks his leg again for the 27,000th time? I mean, you got to look at the teams around you, but also your team. So I think we have improved enough in the offseason to bring that PK number up, to bring that power play number up from where it's been. I mean, much higher than the previous season. Bob Bugner's done a fantastic job. Tenge's shown he has the skill to do it. He just needs to apply it more and be more consistent. So I'm gonna go over.
To your point, real quick, they went from a 16.3 to 21.1 power play percentage.
So it's a couple more percentage points, right? Like between
friends. Significant for that.
So I'm gonna take the over, and I'm gonna toss it over to Brian.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna take the over as well. For all the reasons you guys have already stated, there's guys on the roster who are going to improve this team. DeBrincat was already mentioned. Shayne Gostisbehere was already mentioned for the power play. I mean, they're brought in to literally put pucks in the back of the net for the Detroit Red Wings. Special teams, kind of gurus in terms of power play. And then you mentioned Christian Fischer on the PK. It's just this team, the roster all around is going to be much better. And with other teams falling off, and again, another year, and Derek Lalonde, this is why I'm especially going to be behind the penalty kill going into the new year, because Derek Lalonde kind of emphasizes this defensive-minded hockey style, and he worries a lot about the 5-on-5 metrics. He cares about the expected goals for, which I love. So it's one of those things where I just think with another year in this system, along with the things that you guys have already mentioned being players, I think that it's pretty easy to say that they'll be. I don't think they're going to crush that over under. I think it could be like 15th, but I don't think top half of the league is too abysmal. I mean, going into this last season, Scotty and I were talking about how we just wanted them to finish in the teens, like around middle of the pack. How we wanted the team to finish just outside the wild card, like be in the race down the stretch. And for the most part, they were. Well, if we're taking the natural next step in competitiveness, I don't think asking for your team to be in the top half, even if that is just 15th for power play and penalty kill, is asking for a lot. So it's a mix of like they should be and they could be at the same time.
Yeah, well, I mean, the reason that I cheated on this was because I kind of have like 1 foot on one side of the line and 1 foot on the other. I'm really not worried. And I know we have one. Somebody else's, I'm pretty sure over under is power play related too. So like we'll talk about it more, but like this is the power play. I'm really not worried about improving. I like not only DeBrincat, but just Gostisbehere is a great point. Like that's 2 legitimate like offensive weapons that you are throwing on to like potentially the same power play unit at that. Like I'm really not worried about the power play taking a step in the right direction. The penalty kill, I don't think it's going to like regress. But I mean, there's been so much turnover in the penalty kill over the last 2 years. Like you have to remember, the season before last season was the 32nd ranked penalty kill rather. Like this is not like, oh yeah, they've been like around 20 for like a while and just like can't get over the hump. Like this was the worst penalty kill in hockey 2 seasons ago. So like, there's been obviously a great stride forward this past season, which is awesome. And like you said, like Christian Fischer, we've talked a lot about him as well. Like he was obviously brought in for that exact reason. And there's some other kind of like more defensive minded forwards that they're trying to implement and put into this system. So I don't think it's impossible, which is why I picked it. But I think if I had to choose right now, I would say the power play, I'm fairly confident, honestly, is going to be in the top half of the league. The penalty kill, it wouldn't shock me if they were still in that like 17, 18, 19 range. Like not taking a huge step back, but I'm not sure they single-handedly in one off season like addressed it enough to make me confident that it's going to raise like 2, 3, 4, even 5% either. So that's kind of where I stand. I'm kind of, straddling the line of my cheating over under.
I think the one thing that might help their penalty kill that hasn't been talked about a ton is a 100% healthy Andrew Copp. I think that's 100%. The one thing when you look at Andrew Copp and you say if you take out Andrew Copp's last season, he's a phenomenal player. If you have access to the JFresh stuff, and because we've got so many people on the call today, I'm not going to do like the overlays and stuff, but it's going to be it's a night and day difference. And last season, that first 20 games, 25 games where he was recovering from that core surgery really affected him. And he's a very responsibly defensive forward. And if you can get him on the PK and you get him back to the season before last form, I think you can bump up your PK like 2 spots. And if you bump up your PK 3 spots, I think it has to be. Yeah, because you finished 18th. So you need to bump it up 3 spots and you're there. So you're right at that 15. And I don't think it's too much to ask to just get over the halfway mark. Because like Red Wings motto for this season, like it should be, we were trash. We're not anymore. Like that's the new motto. Like we're good. We might not be great, but we can be good this season.
We are a recycling bin now.
Yeah. We're separating our plastics and our papers. We have a 10-cent deposit. We're making it. We're gonna be okay. Working. Yeah. So Ryan, we're gonna toss it to you to do your first one. It also has you're gonna up the difficulty on the special teams, I guess.
Yeah, I'll go that way. So mine is a power play percentage of 23%. And I kind of already hit at this a little bit, but I'd be intrigued to hear your thoughts.
All right, so I get to go first on this one. So we finished with a 21-11. If we had to hit a 23, we would be approaching the number 9 Buffalo Sabres at 23.42 and the number 10 Florida Panthers at 22.83. We would have to beat out the Caps, the Wild, the Pens, which with Karlsson we're probably not going to do, the Devils, the Bruins, and somehow the Vancouver Canucks. That's the major outlier right there is the Vancouver
Elias
Canucks.
Pettersson, that's why.
Just him himself, and that's maybe a little bit of Quinn Hughes. Throw a sprinkle of Quinn Hughes and just a ton of Elias Pettersson. I am going to take the under on 23%. I think maybe we get to a 21-9, maybe a 22, but I don't think we're getting to a 23. So I'm going to take the under.
You know what's funny is when you said 23%, I'm like, that's less than 2% higher than what they had to do. Obvious over. And then as Greg was breaking down like where that would put them, I was like, oh, maybe that 2% is harder to accomplish than I initially thought. I'm going to take the under on that one with the given context. I think the Red Wings are going to be between, 10 and 15, but I don't think that they're going to crack the top 10 this next year just because the progression of things, it's just, they're not top echelon caliber team yet, but they're getting there. They're getting better. So, I think you're going to be around that 22% mark in the upcoming season.
Yeah, I think this is another great number selection. If we're going back to like formatting it similar to mine, like that would be right at like the 10th ranked power play in the league last year. So we're all confident that they're going to be in the top half. Do they take a jump to go from, so that 17th, 18th range all the way to like a borderline-ish top 10 power play in the league? I will actually take the over, and not like significantly, at 23, maybe even. But I really am feeling very confident about the power play this year. I know that's like Brian alluded to, that's a pretty big jump. That's almost 2 whole percent would be 23.1 for them. So I guess you're looking at about that. But these are, again, like going back to DeBrincat and Ghost, like those are 2 huge additions to this power play. Like those, And like, even, you know, like we've talked about like some of the other forwards too, like Compher, like obviously that's not like a top unit guy, but like, I don't know. I feel really good about where this power play stands at the moment. And I don't think that whatever that is 1.9% increase is the world when you're adding people that have the ceilings offensively that those two dudes specifically have.
And I guess to break against my own point, you've also got another year of Lucas Raymond and another year of Mo Seider.
Right.
So
that was the exact point that I was going to start off with. Was you've got younger players that are going to continue to improve. Raymond and Seider in particular. You have to think and or expect that they're going to be on your top power play. Now, I mean, a little bit torn either way with Seider and Gostisbehere on the first power play unit. You could depending on the game, you could run both of them on the point, or you could kind of rotate them with your top unit depending on what maybe a face-off situation of what's going on, or how you have certain plays set up off a draw. But I think that if you've got DeBrincat getting more back on track and not being in his depression year with Ottawa, you look at him getting back up to a roughly 15% shooting percentage as a whole. His power play percentage, shooting percentage should go up as well. That's more goals in net for you, obviously. I think he'll be more impactful than what we saw with the Kubalik. But if you have him out there with, say, a Raymond, a Larkin, a Seider and or Ghost, and a Perron, it's a lot of playmaking guys to get to your goal scorer, and a guy that's not also afraid for, even though he's a smaller stature player that goes to the net and can make things happen. And also, I think the thing that's lost with him quite a bit in DeBrincat, he's a playmaker. He can find the open guy, and you're going to be surprised by it. And you've got guys like Larkin and Raymond, others that I just mentioned, that move enough. And we saw that last year with how the power play changed. A lot of motion and things going on. If you look back to Chicago, where DeBrincat was at, they had a lot of motion and things going on with guys like Kane and Taves and things happening there. So I think that could fit better to their system. Will it be crazy amount, kind of like what Scott said, over 23? No, but if they hit that mark, there's going to be an improvement. There's going to be more wins, and this team is competing. All I care about, though, overall, is if they get better than what they were last season. Last year was one of their better years since 2009-10. It was the last time they had anything over a 19, or I'm sorry, they had a 19.2 in 09-10, 10-11 had a 22.3, and 14-15 had a 23.8. So over the last 13 years, it's one of their top power play percentage finishes on teams that were much, much better than what they were last season. The guys they brought in, I think they can push them towards that. And if that's the case, we're having the conversations of, are they pushing for a wild card or more by the end of this season? If they don't, we're having the opposite conversation.
Beautiful. So I'm going to do mine, and then we're going to take a quick joint commercial break before we come back to round out the episode. So my over-under first one, we're going to do a fun one that's not super involved, but my over-under is rookie appearances over under 3. Brian.
Over. I think they could even, because you're saying appearances, not like getting the whole rookie eligible season in.
No, rookies that come in. Now, rookies meaning like prospects in our system, not like some dude they just signed to the Griffins for a year.
Does Edvinson count?
So players that have played a Red Wings game already do not count.
Oh.
So Edvinson and Casper are out.
And so is Soderblom.
And Soderblom. So you're looking at like...
he's 4 games shy. He's still technically a rookie.
Yeah. So the others.
So I will count Marco Casper, but I will not count Simon Edvinsson.
All right, you're making it more difficult.
That's ticky-tacky.
I'm going to go under then, because I think that obviously Edvinsson's going to start the year hurt, but he should be back mid-November if we're lucky. I think that he makes an appearance.
Is it going to be
he doesn't
that long?
count? That I think that's what I heard is mid-November was his timeline. I could be mistaken. Don't take my word for it. I've been wrong many times. It could be mid-October for all I know. But I thought I had heard mid-November. Regardless, he doesn't count. I think Casper is going to make it. I think you see Johansson or Wallander at one point, but that's at max 3 guys because you're not going to see Nate Danielson. I don't think you're going to see Sebastian Cossa. I'm trying to think if there's going to be any surprises in camp who will make a push out of training camp, like a Carter Mazer. That's the guy I was thinking. Like maybe Carter Mazer could be a guy who surprises you, but like none of those guys are in my mind, like locks to make an appearance. Like you'd have to have those guys be locks to make an appearance all in 1 year. I think I'm still going to go safe and say the under, especially with how competitive this roster is going into this year with all the signings that they made. Like they have a full roster going into training camp before the rookies have an opportunity to make a push.
Yeah, I think this is one where if this number is 3.5, I'm gonna say under, and if it's 2.5, I'm gonna say over. Like I'm like I think 3 is like the perfect number, really. Like I think that's probably close to what it'll end up being. I obviously if Kasper is included, then he will certainly play at least one game in a winged wheel. I'm also incredibly confident that Johansson is going to get a legitimate stint in the NHL. Whether legitimate means 15 games or 40, we'll see. But I'm very confident that he, all signs point to he was going to last year before the injury happened. I'm very confident that he's going to get some sort of a stint as well. Then it just becomes outside of those two, am I really confident that anybody else in that pool, the field outside of those two, is going to make their NHL debut? And it's tough. I very much could see, it's just one dude. If just one more person is thrown in there, I think that there's probably a likelihood that one other person is in that mix. But to be over 3 would have to be 2 people from, like I said, quote unquote, the field to be making their debut. And I think that's a little rich. So if it's I'll take around 3, but if I have to give if 3 is the thing and I can't just take a push, I'll take the under.
A high 3 or a low 3.
Right, exactly.
Also, before we move on, Ryan, to you, I just want to point out too, let's not sleep on Cross Hannes. He was injured a lot last season, but he was very good when he was healthy. So he comes back healthy this year. He could be a sleeper agent for making that push.
No, agreed. I think Greg gypped us a little bit by going with a hard number of 3. It should have been a 2.5 or something like that, because then we could have had some more fun with it. But I like the names that we've all mentioned: Kasper, Mazur, Cross Hannes, Wallander or Wallinder, if you will, Edvinsson, Johansson. I think that's how they say it, Greg. Don't give me that.
I will not Wallinder. I will William Wallander.
It's going to happen when he gets that first appearance going off.
We're going to have one of those moments.
Exception.
Remember the Berggren
for Jonatan Berggren? Yeah,
I was gonna say, remember the Berggren press conference when they were asking him how to say it, and they were like, "Hey, they just call me Jonathan."
Yeah, yeah. And it's not even Jonathan; it's Jonatan. It's there's no. So it's Jonatan Berggren, or as they have fallen on, Yanni Burgers. That's his name.
Keep getting corrected by Lars over and over. It's fine. But no, I mean, Scott, you made the great point. Johansson seemed like, and you can talk to a lot of folks out in Grand Rapids that are watching them often, that he seemed like the guy that truly stood out last season. And then the injuries happened. Edvinsson, you could argue, had the injury, the bug as well. But when he came up to Detroit, he looked comfortable. There were times where it's he needs some work on things, but that was expected. I mean, I would say my number's at 2, so I'm going to take the under. If I'm going anywhere with it, it's going to be one or both on defense in terms of Edvinsson or Johansson. And my dark horse offensively would probably be Mazur, because that a lot, I think, depends on. I mean, we saw Kasper was reactivated for the prospect camp in July, and he looked actually not bad while he's out there. And we know he had the broken kneecap, I think was the actual injury or something like that. Brutal.
That he broke during that NHL game. He broke his kneecap during that game. Yeah.
So I'm not too pressed to have him come right into the lineup. I'm excited to see what maybe a Mazur would do. I think that we were talking about this before, is that Mazur could be the dark horse coming into camp. And that's a great situation to be in, because he is going to piss you off, but also score goals on you. So that's where we could see him being a depth guy. And that's a guy, I think, Kasper, you want in your top 6. Right now, that may not be the case for him. Mazur is a guy you could throw in your middle 6 or bottom 6, and you're not going to be upset about it. And he's going to help improve your team and make you better. So that's where it's kind of tough on the over-under, but I'll stick with the under on 2, with my eyes looking more toward defense than anything else.
All right, I'm taking the over. We're going to go Marco Kasper. We are going to go Carter. How confident I am in Carter Mazur. I'm taking Carter Mazur. I'm going to go Wallinder because of the season Wallinder had before coming over to North America and just how I heard Dan Cleary talk about him. I am taking Wallinder and I'm taking Albert Johansson because if Albert Johansson was not injured when Simon Edvinsson was called up, Johansson would have been the call up. I mean, there's a chance that the person people love to forget, Alex Doucette, could get a call up at some point during the season. There is a chance. I don't think Lombardi will get a call up. Lombardi has already said what he feels are his shortcomings that he needs to work on. But I'm going to take the over because I think we have such a good, not just prospect pool, but prospect pool that will be playing in North America, in Grand Rapids. I think there is absolutely a chance that 4 guys will at some point play NHL games this season. So I'm going to take that. And we are overdue, but we are going to take a collective group commercial break before we come back. We'll do a couple more and then we'll close out the episode because, I mean, we have a list more, but we're running out of time. So we're going to take a collective group break and then we will be back to answer more over-unders. So hold on 1 second. New customers, download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code THPN. Bet just $5 to score $150 in bonus bets instantly. That's code THPN. Only at DraftKings Sportsbook. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In Massachusetts, call 800-327-5050 or visit gamblinghelplinema.org. In New York, call 877-HOPENY or text HOPENY. In Kansas, call 1-800-522-4700. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort, Kansas, in West Virginia, gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit www.1800gambler.net. All games regulated by West Virginia Lottery. Please play responsibly in partnership with Hollywood Casino at Charlestown Races. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. 21 plus in most eligible states, but age varies by jurisdiction. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for details and state-specific responsible gambling resources. Bonus bets expire 7 days after issuance. 1 boost per eligible game. Opt-in required. Max bet $50. 10 plus legal required for 100% boost. Eligibility, wagering, and deposit restrictions apply. Even if you're not going on vacation, summer's all about a vacation state of mind. Whether I want to listen to my Spotify playlists on repeat or just need to retreat inside my own head for a bit, I love creating my own summer soundtrack by popping in my Raycon wireless earbuds. There is so much going on all summer. Sometimes you need some upbeat music to pump you up before you see people or to stay calm with some guided meditation. Right now, I'm just listening to podcasts on my walks downtown when I get lunch at work, and it's really helping me keep my composure to get to that giant list of emails. Let me tell you right now, Raycons are the best way to listen. Use earbud tap functions to toggle between 3 customizable sound profiles, noise isolation, and awareness mode. Raycons have a 32-hour battery life, including 8 hours of playtime, so you can listen to what you want, when you want, for a really long time. They come with custom gel tips for the most comfortable in-ear fit and start at half the price of other premium audio brands, but they sound just as good. And Raycons come with a 30-day happiness guarantee, so you can't really lose. Create your own soundtrack with Raycon right now. Grindline podcast listeners can get 15% off their Raycon order at buyraycon.com/THPN. That's buyraycon.com/THPN to save 15% on Raycons. buyraycon.com/THPN. And we're back, and we are going to do a lightning round. Well, I guess it's a pseudo lightning round. Ryan's making fun of me already because I'm never enthusiastic enough, and it's a running joke now that every time I go, and we're back, and it just doesn't sound like peppy enough. Like I'm happy to be back.
I just love the way how much you try now to not be miserable coming back from the break.
And we're back, and we're gonna go through these kind of quickly. So we each have one more, and we're gonna do kind of truncated versions of them. But Brian, give us your next over/under.
Yeah, so this past season, the Detroit Red Wings didn't score a lot of goals, and they got scored on a lot. Well, I'm going to cover the goals for aspect of things. They're 24th in the league this past season in goals for with 237. The 16th place team, the Pittsburgh Penguins, so dead center in the middle of the league, had 261. So that's my over-under. Over-under goals for 261 on the season. Will they be top half or bottom half of the league is basically what I'm asking.
I'm going to go with, where did you say they finished this year?
24th with 237, and
Right.
Pittsburgh was 16th with 261.
Yeah, it's a big jump for me. So I'm going to go with bottom half. I do think that they take a step forward in that area, certainly. But that's a really, really big jump to go from a bottom 6, bottom 7 team in the NHL to a top half of the league team in that. That's a really big jump for me. I love the off season. I'm very excited about the year, but that's too big of a jump for me to be all over the over on that one. So I'll take bottom half of the league.
That's tough because with some of the things we've mentioned in terms of what they can potentially do on the power play, the offensive skill they brought in, I mean, you feel like there's going to be a bump. I wish I had handy what their goal differential was that they brought in. I feel like it definitely went up. I mean, Kubalik's 20 goals out, but you got 20 plus in with DeBrincat. I don't offhand the other guys, what they brought with them, but I think there can be an improvement. I think that limit could push around 250-ish, but that's not to say that's a bad thing. So I'm still going to stick with the under, but I think it's going to be tight because you look at most of the teams that scored over 260. Let's see, starting with St. Louis, there's two teams that had 40 wins or less that scored 260 goals. So that tells me right there, if they're hitting 260, they're 1, pushing for the playoffs, and 2, scoring goals. Obviously, simple. That's the great part about that one. So the only 2 teams that had less than 40 wins and scored over 260 goals were Vancouver and St. Louis, who had 260 on the money. Ottawa had 259 right behind them. So I think if you're pushing that 260 win mark, we're having different conversations come April. So I'm going to stick with the under, but that's not to say that we're not having happy conversations in several months from now.
Oh, we're having happy conversations. 24 goals. So we need 25 more goals on the season to hit that. I'm taking the over. You're going to give me 30 plus from Alex DeBrincat. Lucas Raymond's going to give me a 30-goal season. You brought in a JT Compher who's going to add goals. You brought in a Daniel Sprong who's going to boost that bottom 6. A Klim Kostin that you're asking to come in and telling me you're going to give him a bigger role. You brought in a Shayne Gostisbehere who's like a goal-scoring machine from the blue line, and you're telling me I only need 25 more goals than last season when the teams around us, none of them got better defensively. I'm going to take the over. I think that's easy.
Kissing rainbows.
I think that's easy. You're gonna give me 265 to 270 goals next season.
I'm right in lockstep with Greg, to be honest. I was going to say the same thing. This team only needs 25 more goals. You brought in, I mean, even in his down year, DeBrincat had 27 goals last year. And then on top of that, Lucas Raymond, I won't say 30 goals, but 20, 25 goals. Daniel Sprong, if he goes anywhere between 15 and 20. You have Shayne Gostisbehere, like he was saying. Basically, I'm echoing everything that Greg just said because I completely agree with him that I don't think 25 more goals for a team that's trying to score more goals anyways is too much to ask for, because I go back to my philosophy this offseason. This team needs to take a step forward. And in order to do that, they need to accomplish these things.
What about a whole season of Michael Rasmussen? Like a more developed top line Michael Rasmussen.
Brian and Greg might be the same person. Greg may be Brian with hair. Like this is really.
I mean, but jokes aside, Michael Rasmussen has shown market development. Like year over year, we had joked all the time. Like as soon as Michael Rasmussen learned how to not fall down, he became a fantastic hockey player. Mm-hmm. And I'm gonna take the over. I'm gonna take the over on it. Scotty, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know. You guys are like the enthusiasm you two have about the over makes me want to take the over now. And fair points all around, to be honest. My next one is more like individual player based, but a similar premise. So last season, the Detroit Red Wings had 6 players with over 40 points, but only 2 with 50 or more. That would be Perron and obviously Larkin. So my question is, when it comes to the amount of players on the Red Wings that will have 50 points this season. So again, 2 last year. I put the number at 4.5. That's adding DeBrincat obviously into there. I think that's relatively, I don't want to get too out of myself, but I think that's relatively safe if he does what you're expecting him to do. And then you have players like Raymond, who were only 5 points away. Copp, who got off to a really slow start. He was only 8 points away. So I am putting the number at 4.5 over under players on the Red Wings that after game 82 will have 50 or more points.
Ooh, I'm gonna take the over, and I might have just walked back my entire answer for the over under on goals for by saying so, because the more I think about it, I mean, it's doable. You look at the guys they brought in, DeBrincat, if he gets back to form, you're in great shape. He's going to hit that 50-point mark. You got to think that Raymond's taking the next step. He's going to hit that 50-point mark. Seider finished with 42 and 82. There's no doubt that he's going to improve. Now, how much of that could be potentially lost to a guy like Gostisbehere? I'm not really sure. But what was Ghost's numbers from last year? Do you know offhand? I was the only player I didn't have pulled up.
Yeah, Shayne Gostisbehere last season, 75 games played, 13 goals, 28 assists for 41 points.
I'll take that from him all day, because I mean, even when Hronek left, he had 38 through 60. So he was definitely going to be close to that 50-point mark. And I think I talked about it last week or two, a couple of episodes ago. You've got a guy like Hronek and Gostisbehere, maybe even better offensively. So I'm going to take the over without getting too much more long-winded here. I think it's doable.
I'm also going to take the over. Like you mentioned, I've got Lucas Raymond possibly with a 70-point season. I think even Max Boltman had said you could see a 70-point season out of Lucas Raymond. You've got Mo Seider, who I think takes a step forward after not being anchored down by Chiarot anymore. I mean, the Seider-Walman pair, I think, should be the pair on day one and continue throughout the season unless someone gets injured. Andrew Copp, who I expect to be fully back to form, Dylan Larkin, Alex DeBrincat. Gostisbehere has the ability to do it. JT Compher did it last season. He had over a 50-point season. So I'm going to take the over. I'm going to take the over on 4.5. I've got, 7 possibles on my list. And if 2 drop off, that's a 5. So I'm going to take the over.
Even last year, they had 4 guys over 50. So
yeah, I'll take it.
I mean, it's an over for me because I'll keep it short and sweet too. There's 5 players on this team that I think are locks for over 50 points, and that's Dylan Larkin, Perron, Alex DeBrincat, Lucas Raymond, and Moritz Seider. Moritz Seider's already had a 50-point season under his belt. So, and I know that both Raymond and Seider, at least on a production scale, slid back a little bit, had a sophomore slump, as people like to say, production-wise. I think that, another year under their belt, another offseason to get bigger and stronger and better at the game of hockey. They're locks to get 50 points again. I think DeBrincat's a lock to get 50 points. And Perron, he's Mr. Consistent. If you looked at his career tenure, it's been like 50 points every single year. And then Larkin's just proven to be like a 70 to 80 point guy every single year. So I think the over's a lock.
And since we're all on the over so far, I think what we're looking at too is that if you look at the division of minutes past the first line, Lalonde loves to roll the bottom 3 lines around the same ice time. So you're not saying, if you've got a Berggren and maybe Berggren pops off this season and bumps his numbers up, he's going to get probably around the same ice time if he's in the bottom 6 as if he was in the mid 6. So that's another point.
For sure. Yeah, I'm with everybody else. I'm pretty lockstep. I think that it's an over. I think I'm closer to 5 exactly, which is why I picked 4.5. That's, a 2.5 player improvement, plus where I stand is just on the other side of that. But I mean, yeah, echoing a lot of the same points, Larkin and DeBrincat should be absolute locks for that. And then even if Perron has a 49-point season or something, a 5-point improvement from Raymond should be more than not only acceptable, but expected, to be honest. And then the Seider point is a great one that I hadn't really fully considered beforehand, but the way his production upticked after, going on a pairing with Walman, shouldn't be overlooked either. I feel good about, I think my number is probably at about 5. But I that's still the over. So there you go.
I like it. Now, and if you look, unless I completely jacked it up, last time they had 5 guys over 50, 11, 12, 2011, 12. And Hoodler was your 50-point guy.
Yuri Hoodler.
Happy Hoodler. Wow. We all know why he was happy now.
Yeah, Hoodler, Franzen, Filppula, Datsuk, Zetterberg. There you go.
Yeah,
There
it's
you go.
pretty insane. Ryan,
All
you're
right.
up.
Mine is gonna go the opposite of Brian from a little bit ago. Goals allowed in the season at 260. So let me preface this: there was only 3 teams with 40 or more wins over 260: Buffalo, Florida, and Pittsburgh. One of them made the playoffs. Detroit allowed 275, which dropped down from 310, but they only had a 6-point swing in the standings. Go.
Oh Lord. 260, which would put us underneath the Washington Capitals, but above the Edmonton Oilers. So Edmonton led in 256, Washington 261. We would have to beat. Yeah, this is not going to be an easy. Well, it's 275 goals allowed. So let's see. Yeah, I think I'll take the over. I'm expecting again, and we said it last season. Fewer.
Here's the thing: over is worse.
Okay, I'm gonna take the under. Then I'm gonna take the under. We're gonna have less blowouts because we say that every year. We're gonna have less blowouts, and then we have like a couple less blowouts, but still some pretty bad ones. So I'm gonna take the under. But probably not by much. So I'm going to say if we're at the 250 to 255, we are between the Tampa Bay Lightning, the Kraken, and the Kings. And I think that's respectable territory for me. So I'm going to take the under. I'm going to go to around 255.
I'm taking the under too. I mean, if you're asking the team to allow, so if the under would be 16 less goals than they did the year before, I think I'd be a hypocrite to come in here and say, after how much I propped up Ville Husso and the improved defense and the second year of Derek Lalonde's scheme, then to come in here and say the team can't go out and allow 16 less goals across 82 games. I think that they're hitting the under on 260 goals allowed all day.
Yeah, I'm going to go with the under as well. I think that really the biggest thing for me is just like having a stable backup goalie. Like I think that alone could get you, like anywhere from 10 to 15 goals up on that list. Nonetheless, if Husso doesn't have like 2 of the worst months we've ever seen from a goaltender, like, you know what I mean? Like if both of those things happen, they're absolutely doing it. If only one of those things happen, they're probably in the running to do it. So